Hey guys, I'm just popping on here for another Q&A. So any questions that you have, I'm going to be answering them as I talk today. I just posted a video on anxiety, which is more the specialty that I had when I was a therapist than my spiritual stuff. But anxiety is kind of one of the triggers that people see when they have shadow that needs to be uncovered. So for those of you guys who are totally new to my world, I'm Danielle Massi. I'm a licensed licensed psychotherapist and master shadow worker. And I deal a lot with the unconscious mind. The unconscious is all the stuff that you're not aware of. It's the things that are hidden deep beneath the surface, the stuff that is buried so far down that it's hard to get to. And that is the root cause of most of our anxiety and depression. When I was a therapist, what I would see time and time again is people who had a lot of anxiety or who'd been depressed for a long time, and they didn't know what to do with that because they'd been in therapy for so long that it never felt like they got to the root of the issue. It was like pulling weeds out of a garden over and over again, but they kept growing back, and they couldn't figure out why these weeds would keep growing back. And the reason for that is because it was not getting to the root source of why the weeds were there in the first place. That's the point of shadow work. Shadow work is the process of really going down underneath the soil to figure out how did it even happen in the first place and how do we eradicate them from the stem, from the root, from the core. So any questions that you have about shadow work or the unconscious mind or anxiety or spirituality, feel free to pop them down into the comment section. I'm just going to be answering them as they come. And this is something that I've been doing for the past few days. It seems like people are really into it. So yeah, let me know what questions you have. Something I get asked pretty often with the shadow is, what is it? Just like basic information about what the shadow is. So the shadow is the unconscious mind. It's the deepest level of your consciousness. And we have 3 different levels of consciousness that you guys can look into. And it's sort of like an iceberg. That's the analogy that I love to use. The conscious mind is like the iceberg that's above the water. It's what you can clearly see. It's easy to spot. You know exactly what you're looking at. The conscious is like knowing that you're watching this right now or knowing what you ate for breakfast. It is the thoughts that you have in your mind that you're just very aware of. The conscious mind is easily accessed. Then we have the subconscious. That's the next level of consciousness. The subconscious is the stuff that's like right below the water, like the iceberg that's just underneath the surface. Like if you look over the edge, you can see it. It's a little murky because it's under the water. It's like reflected and diluted and a little bit different, but you can see it. You know that it's there, which means that you can access it in order to create change. When people go to therapy, like when people used to come to me as a therapist, that was the space we were dealing with, because this is the stuff that you know is there. You know it's there, we can access it, we can deal with it, we can impart change. Is it always fun? No, not really. It's not really super fun, but it can cause really amazing long-term results if you do that. This is like behavioral changes and stuff. Then we have the unconscious mind. And this is the stuff that's like so far under the surface, like the iceberg that's like way down below the water. It makes up 90% of your brain's capacity. This is the reason why you guys have heard people say we don't use 90% of our brains, because the unconscious mind is that 90%. And everything that's down there makes you who you are. It changes your personality. It changes the way you think. It's the reason why you can have a really good friend or a teacher or a coworker who just sees the world so differently than you. It's almost like you're on a different planet, because your unconscious shapes the way that you see everything. For those of you guys who are just hopping on, I'm answering any questions that you guys have about spirituality, about the shadow, about meditation, or anything. Really, I used to be a therapist. If you have therapy questions, like, go for it, ask them. Just on here doing a Q&A because I've been doing this for the past few days and it seems to be a real big hit. So let me know what questions you have while I'm here. I also do past life work, and I know that this is something that a lot of people are interested in. So if you have questions about past lives, pop those into the comments too, any questions that you have. And in the meantime, I'm just kind of riffing on the topics that I like, so feel free to ask your questions. So what I was just talking about was, what is the shadow? The shadow is the unconscious mind. It's all that stuff that's hidden all the way below the surface, and it changes who you are. Now, there's this really, really weird phenomenon that happens for us. Yeah, past lives are super cool. What happens for us is our personalities are shaped by what's called a subconscious feedback loop. Your experiences that you have every single day trigger a chemical response within the brain. This is emotions. This is the hormones that are enacted within your gut. So what happens when this chemical chain reaction starts is it sends a message down the nervous system, down the vagus nerve, into the body to react. Like, let's get her heart to race. Let's get her hands to get sweaty. Let's create some tension, whatever it is. And whenever that message, that physical reaction that gets created, then sends a message back up through the vagus nerve to the mind in the form of a thought. And that thought usually reinforces the experience. So if you guys are adrenaline seekers, if you really, really love to do things that are scary, the idea of walking across a rickety bridge that is like 100 feet over, like a crazy water thing that if you fell down into it, you definitely die, like that might excite you. And the reason why would be because your early childhood experiences made you feel like you were going to be safe and that you could do things that were kind of scary. So it would be like that experience, that like walking over that rickety bridge over the tumultuous waters would trigger excitement within the mind. That excitement would be feel-good hormones, serotonin, adrenaline, norepinephrine. They would pump down through the body and they would make the blood rush to certain areas to reinforce this, which would send a message back up to the mind about this is awesome. If you're someone who's terrified of that stuff, like if you are just naturally a little bit more risk averse and scared, the exact same experience would trigger a whole different loop within your mind and your body. It would cause adrenaline and cortisol to pump, but it would really, really cause, your heart to race, your palms to get sweaty, your stomach to start doing backflips. It would make you nervous. And that nervous reaction would send a message back up to the brain of fuck no, like I don't want to do this at all. And that would reinforce experiences of things are scary and I don't want to do this anymore. This is how our personalities form. How many of you guys that are watching this have been told like you're an introvert or you're an extrovert or you're a risk averse or a risk taker or daredevil? We get told these things about us, right? All the time. And these things that we're told about us inform that feedback loop. Okay, so I just feel so isolated. I try to connect to spirit, but I feel like I'm in a cage. Ooh, okay. So tell me a little bit more about that. Like, what is it that's making you feel like you're in a cage? Do you feel like your third eye isn't open? Because I can talk about that. Do you feel isolated in that nobody else gets it? So you're doing this stuff by yourself? Tell me more. And for everybody that's hopping on right now, just pop into the comments and let me know what questions you have about spirituality. In particular, things I'd love to talk about are shadow work, past lives, the brain. Anxiety is a huge thing for me because trauma is my specialty. Anything you're thinking, but it could also just be, how do I connect with spirit? How do I actually forge that connection so that I can do this work on my own? Energy healing, whatever you're thinking. Or even how do I start down my path of spirituality? Because I know that's a big topic for a lot of people. And it can be confusing when you first start getting into this stuff, especially now in this kind of like woo-woo, everything's commercialized. You have to look a certain way in order to practice spirituality and the 5D's the best, like all that bullshit. So ask away. Any questions that you have, pop them right into the comments section. So while I'm waiting for her to answer and tell me about what it is that's making her feel like she's in a cage, maybe I'll just talk about opening your third eye, because I know that that could potentially be one of the things she's referring to. When your third eye is closed, which happens for most of us because of our early childhood experiences where people tell us it's bad, or we see scary movies and stuff like that, our third eyes tend to close. And all that means is that spirit is like a two-way connection. And if we are afraid of it and we don't want to open up that connection, then they don't push it either. And so we have to find a way to reforge that connection. We have to kind of open the door back up. So what you need to do if you want to connect with spirit more is to start creating a routine where you are opening up the door on a regular basis. Things like meditating or talking to your spirit guides out loud, which I love to have people do when they're first getting into this, really opens up that pathway. It creates that connection where spirit's like, okay, they're into this. I can start sending them some signs. They might send you things like birds or feathers or dimes or certain number sequences like 333 or 1111. It's a sign that that door is opening. And you just keep pushing it and keep opening it and keep letting it be something that you are regularly showing like, okay, I'm in this. I'm free to contact. And what they'll do is they'll slowly start contacting you. For a lot of us, we learn as kids that it's not safe. People tell us that it's bad and it's wrong. So when spirits do connect with us when we're kids, we could have a reaction where it's like, no, don't, this scares me. Very often kids will recount their experiences in their past lives, and they'll do this often. Like, oh, thank God I found you again. Like, I'm so glad you got to be my mommy again. And people might freak out over that. Like, what does that mean? What does that even do? Like, why are you saying that? And that fear that they have, the child will internalize it, and it'll make them start to shut that off. So anyways, that's my random little digression. Lana says, I find times everywhere. That's a spirit sign. So start to push it a little bit if you're open to it. You can start saying out loud when you find a dime, like, thank you for this, spirit guides. And just acknowledge that they're doing this. The same way you would want to in a relationship, right? Like, imagine you're dating somebody and you like cook dinner every night, even though you work a full-time job. If you did that every night and they never said anything, you'd be like, fuck you. Like, why do I even do this? But if every time you did it, they're like, dude, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I know you don't have a lot of time and you still do this. You feel appreciated. You feel like you want to do it more. It's the same thing with spirit guides. So talk to them. Okay, so go back to the earlier comment. I'm left to the situation where I always end up being or dealing with it alone. And I think I did it to myself, but now I'm at a point where I feel like panic is setting in. Okay, so I still want a little bit more clarity on this. Is it that you feel like every time you're trying to connect with spirits, you feel like you're alone? Like when you're connecting with them, you feel isolated? I just need a little bit more clarity so I can send you in the right direction. Okay, so if you do this, how can you protect yourself from evil forces? Okay, so let's talk about this whole thing, right? We have been internalized to feel fear. It's something that humanity has done for a very long time to make us feel like we can be controlled. So if you're afraid, it makes you complacent. It makes you a good rule follower. If you're not afraid, then you're going to be a free thinker. You're going to do what you want to do. Fear is the enemy when it comes to connecting to spirit. Does that mean that there's not bad things around? No, there are. I'm not going to lie to you. But it doesn't mean that you're ever going to connect with them. When you come from a place where you feel really grounded and really calm and full of love and heart-centric, you will never connect to those darker forces. You just won't. It's when you're afraid that you do. When you're afraid, stuff that's a little bit more icky can come through. And let me just tell you, most spirits that are icky are not evil. They're not bad. It's just like, think about your neighbors, right? This is a good analogy. Think about the neighbors that you have on your block. Some of them are awesome and really nice. And like that old guy who's always just watching out for everybody, super cool. And then sometimes you have neighbors that are assholes. And when they die, it doesn't make them into a perfect spirit. They're still kind of assholes. That's more of the stuff that you're going to come across when you have lower vibrational energy. That spirits that are just kind of assholes will be around, where it's like, I told you to stop walking across my lawn, so now I'm going to bother you kind of thing. But if you are at this point where you're just open to love and good energy, and you're focusing your energy on that stuff, what's going to happen is those are the spirits that are going to reach out to you. It's going to be like your great aunt who just wanted to see you go to prom. So just really focusing and setting the intention on that good energy. For additional clearing to just really keep yourself safe, I always wear black tourmaline, or I recommend people wear black tourmaline in the beginning. It absorbs negative energy. It's a really powerful, beautiful stone. Don't put it in your water because it's a rock that, this is a little bit earth sciencey, but like it actually sheds in such a way where pieces break off and you don't want to ingest it. So don't put that one in your water. Just keep it on your person. You can put them in the four corners of your room. You can also use selenite. It's really clearing, grounding stone, super nice and just like nice to clear. And anything along those lines. It's really about intentions. And you are so much more than the tools, right? And there's a lot of tools that help deepen a practice, like crystals and oils and tarot cards and everything that there is out there. But it's really about you. You are the conduit. You are the energy. So come here first. And you could even ask yourself the question of what's going to make me feel good, because that's the most important thing. Okay, let me just go back up. Let's see. Okay, I always see the numbers 1111. What does that mean? Anytime you see a spirit-guided message, whether it's dimes or feathers or birds in your windowsill or numbers like 1111, think about it almost as like a knock at the door. Like spirits are trying to just go like, hey, we're here. Hi. And it's up to you to answer the door or not. It's not a specific message, not necessarily. If you look them up online, like if you keep seeing the same crow outside your window every day, there's definitely some kind of spirit guided message that you can look for, because spirits will send specific things for a reason, like a crow versus sending a fox. But for the most part, think about it as that knock at the door. It's them kind of going, is it cool for us to come in? And then it's up to you to really open that door wide open. You have to be the one to say, yeah, like come on in, it's safe. So that's why I recommend when you get those messages and those signs to say it out loud. Like, spirit guides, I know that you sent me a crow again. Thank you for sending that. Let me know more. Like, keep connecting with me. Keep leaving me breadcrumbs. And then start to meditate. Because when you meditate, when you really let your mind get quiet, answers are going to start to come through. You're going to do something called channeling. Once your mind is really clear and your energy is good, information is just going to show up in your mind. And it's going to come out of nowhere. Very often, for me and for other people, it almost sounds like it's not your voice. Like, think about your inner monologue. Your voice sounds a specific way when you're talking to yourself. Like when you're trying to come up with a recipe and you're like in your mind, like, should I add turmeric to this? It sounds different than that gut reaction of like, we need you to know, blah, blah, blah. It's just going to feel and sound different. So start paying attention. Okay, going back up everywhere. I find dimes everywhere. That's awesome. Okay. I do that with hearts. I know I'm on the right path when I see a heart. I love this. Yeah, I have a friend who does the same thing. When she sees hearts, like someone drew one in the sand, or she finds a rock that's shaped like a heart, or one of her kids will just come up and go, I felt like you needed this today. And it's always a sign for her. My son says he feels vibes and energy and recently told me, Mom, you should get an evil eye. Ooh, okay. So if your son is telling you should get an evil eye, listen. Kids are extremely intuitive. Now remember again that fear is the enemy, so don't let it scare you. It's not something to be scared of. An evil eye is really just protective energy around you, so just let it be that. Just let it be protective, and don't worry about anyone else or anything negative. If it's still something that's making you feel a little bit nervous, you can go ahead and do something like a ritual to really just cleanse your space. I know that with burning things like Palo Santo or sage, obviously it's a practice that is specific to certain cultures. So be careful with what you choose. You really want to know what it is that you're doing. Contact people who are experts on this stuff and ask them for their advice. But I think crystals in the corner of your house, black tourmaline to absorb negative energy, and an evil eye necklace will do the trick. Okay, let's see. Is it that all past lives you live the exact same way, or one life you can be a doctor and another a nurse? Oh, this is a really good question. Okay, so they're usually all very different, right? And they might have some similar strands, but they tend to be very different. So let me use some examples from real life. So some past life work that I've done with people, one person's coming to mind in particular. During her session, we happened to see 6 past lives, which is rare, by the way. If you guys book a session with me, it's usually 1. But if there's a lesson that you need to see, like kind of expanded across the lifespan, you'll see a bunch. So we saw her as a cave woman. We saw her in Atlantis. We saw her, God, I'm trying to remember. I think we also saw her in like some beach area. We couldn't really pinpoint exactly where it was, but it felt tropical. We saw her in this current lifetime, and we saw a future lifetime, which happens sometimes with past life work. And in every single one of those, her role was very different. She was not always a healer. In one of them, she was a mother, and that was her main purpose. She was really just there to nurture her kids and to take care of them, and she died in that past life taking care of them. It changes and it moves. So what I do find when I do past life work with people, when they come back for 2, 3, 4, 5 sessions, and even for myself, where I've seen a lot of my past lives, is that it has similar strands. Someone else I'm thinking of had a past life in Japan where she was an astrologer, and she would go into people's homes and like read their birth charts and do stuff like that. And it was beautiful. She does not practice astrology at all now. Now she's a relationship coach, and that's like her whole MO. It still falls into the sphere of healing. It just is like a very, very different take on it. So there can be similarities and similar threads, but very rarely the same thing. Occasionally, when you've had so many lifetimes, you'll come back to something. Like I've done shadow work and past life work in my other past lives. So it's something I came back to, but that's not all I've done. I've done other things. I was a witch living in the woods in one of my past lives where it was really focused on herbalism and connecting to the earth. So we all have different ones. I had a time thrown at my back and then a vacuum turned on. That is your spirits being like, hey, like, dude, listen. Let's see. Keep going. I really want to connect with my mom that passed away 2 years ago. I want peace of mind. First off, I'm so sorry for your loss. So sorry for your loss. It's hard when we lose a parent and nobody really prepares you for that feeling. So when you want to connect with a certain spirit guide, like a loved one that's passed on, start talking to them out loud and ask them to send you specific signs. So what you can do is talk to your mom out loud and just tell her how you're doing and that you're okay and that you want to connect with her more. And if she's listening and she can, to have her send you pink orchids, to have her just like bring your attention to it. Now remember, this will come in a variety of ways. Like you might be walking through a department store, like you're walking through Marshall's or Macy's, and all of a sudden you just turn your head and you don't know why you did that, and you'll see one like on the counter somewhere. It might be that somebody delivers them to your front door. It might be that as you're driving, you just hear pink orchids over the radio. It's going to come in different ways. So be open to receiving the signs. A lot of people use ones that are easy, like dimes. My husband and his entire family, who are very, very religious, very Catholic, had created that connection with my husband's grandfather, who's passed now for quite a few years. After he died, they all got together as a group and said, like, Grandpa, when you're around, send us dimes that are heads up. And they'll show up in the most random places. Like at the counter at Chick-fil-A, the person will say, like, we don't have any pennies. We don't have enough change to give you this, but I'll just give you a dime. And they'll hand it to them heads up. Stuff like that. So just really create that connection. But know that when spirits pass on, even if they had things that were sort of unfinished here, like they weren't ready to go, it didn't seem like it was their time, we choose things like the moment of our death before we're born. And it's always to learn some sort of a lesson. It's always to help our soul reach the highest and greatest good. So even if it felt like she didn't want to go before she did, know that she's at peace when she crossed over and that she understands that everything happened for a reason and she's always going to be with you. Okay, let's see. Moving down. Okay, I'm going to need some evidentiary support of your abilities. Can we make this happen? Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few books and research on this work in particular. So the ones that come to mind that might be really good to start to research are Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's a renowned neuroscientist. He has a ton of studies and evidence about the power of using meditation to access the unconscious mind. Definitely worth checking out. There's also Dr. Brian Weiss. He is a former psychiatrist who moved over into past life work on accident, kind of like how I did, where he started helping people regress. And he was only expecting to regress into their childhoods, which is shadow work. And what would happen is they would fall back much further and find their past lives. His research is outstanding. Definitely check him out and see what he has to say. And I don't want to make the announcement yet, but I may or may not have a book coming out in spring of next year that will have some more. So, yep, that's all I'm going to say about that because I can't say anything officially yet. Okay, so moving back further. Let's see. I'm so glad you taught this too. Okay, so hello from, hi. Okay, so let's see, asking more questions. Oh gosh, as questions come through, it moves my comments, so bear with me, guys. I know I've had past lives, I feel, on other planets that are Earth-like. Yeah, we all have. Not all. Most of us have had past lives off planet. When you think about our souls, they are so vast and so expansive. And we have so many planets, not just in this solar system, but there are other solar systems that exist. I think it'd be naive to think that we are the only life beings that exist in the entire universe. Completely naive. There's so much that we don't know and we don't understand yet. So, yeah, very possible. I've seen that before during past life work. Hey, okay, try to do me. I never just do people's past lives randomly on the spot. You can book a session right through my website. I'm intrigued. I'm glad you are. New to past lives, it's so interesting. Yeah, it's really fascinating. I would recommend reading Dr. Brian Weiss's work. Many Lives, Many Masters is his debut book. It's fantastic. Let's see. I was told my IG was a cleaner named Betty. She was born and now is a clean freak. Okay, can multiple past lives cause conflict with the same area of your current likes and dislikes? They can. So patterns tend to repeat throughout our lives. When we have some kind of an issue in a past life, it will pop up now if we don't heal it. This is called a karmic loop. So the things that trigger you that don't trigger other people, that's a sign that this is from a past life, not from a current one. It could also be from early childhood. It just depends. When you think about the things that really throw you more than other people, like let's say you keep getting into abusive relationships and it makes no sense because your parents have a really healthy marriage. It just, like on paper, nobody can really figure it out. Your therapist can't find any evidence of why this would be happening to you. That's a sign that that's a past life karmic loop coming through. That throughout past lives, you had that same issue where you were either the abuser or the abused. And in this life, you're replaying that. When we have karmic loops, our entire purpose in this lifetime is to heal those karmic loops. It helps us to kind of ascend in a way, or to level up, for lack of a better term. It's important for us to identify those karmic loops and to do the healing work. These can come in so many different forms. It can come in the form of a relationship or a friendship or a family relationship, like the little thing about everybody hating their mother-in-laws. It's always some kind of karmic tension. And when you have this karmic tension, it's a sign that there's past life reasons for it. If you do a regression, you can go back and see the root cause of it. I just did a regression with someone from Create Your Light Academy, which is my group program, yesterday. And what we saw, and right now, let me just give you background on this. Right now, she's someone who's really into dark stuff. Like she loves Halloween, she loves scary movies, she loves Ouija boards, like she just loves all this shit. And at the same time, the work that she wants to do is to be a healer. She's really focused on doing good in the world. So it's almost like these two different things happening at the same time, and it never really made sense. When we did her past life regression yesterday, she found herself in a little village in what felt like maybe the late 1800s. And she felt like she was part of the town, but she was kind of an outsider and it didn't really make sense. And then she would go outside the town. She had a little cottage out there. There was like a couple other cottages nearby, friends, everything was good. She saw herself doing herbalism and making potions. Everything's great. And then the rumors started to go in the town that she was evil. And she, who was like really just focused on being a healer, but she never really fit in, felt like she needed to embrace that in this life and be like, good, if you're going to hate me, then I'm going to give you a reason to hate me. I'm going to dress in all black and I'm going to really make this part of my personality. So I'm going to beat you to the punch, essentially. So now it's something that she's dealing with through this lifetime in this karmic loop. So going back to the past helps you to see it and to make that connection. Okay. Hey, new here. Hey, what's going on? Let's see. Came across past lives. Yeah, you should definitely check them out. It's so fascinating. Can you choose which past life you go to in a session? So yes and no. You can set the intention ahead of time. Like if you know there's a past life, like if you've always been connected to the French Revolution, if before we do the past life regression, you're like, please, like spirit guides, take me to that one. I want to see it so bad. They'll take that into consideration. But if there's something you need to see more, they'll bypass you and take you to that. When I did my first past life regression for myself, like when I went to a past life regressionist and had them take me to a past life before I ever got into this work, I thought for sure we were going to go to ancient Egypt because I have memories of that lifetime. I'm so connected to ancient Egypt. I was like 100% that's where we're going to go. And we ended up in Scotland in the 1600s. I was blown away. I was a little shocked. I was definitely confused. It didn't make any sense. And it happened for the next 2, 3, 4 sessions that I had with her. And by, I think it was the 5th session, we finally went to ancient Egypt. And I was like, oh, there it is. We're finally there. So yes and no. Yes, we're on the right side of TikTok now. Okay, so you said, I think I was cheated on in a past life. If that's a fear that you have right now, and it's something that kind of lives in your body, but you don't have reason to feel that way, like if you've never had a relationship that ended that way, or your parents are happily married, definitely a sign that that's a past life thing. Question, can we choose our life? So before we're born, when we're still living within the upper realm, we do have a say in how we incarnate. The way that this works is we get to choose a path. So we're given a few different options of different paths that we can go down. We have family members that move with us and travel with us throughout lifetimes. So timing might change because of this. Like if you incarnate now, you're going to be in this one. If you wait another 50 years, you're going to be in that one. And souls don't mind waiting. Time feels very different on the other side. So yeah, we can choose. And when you're choosing, you're doing it because you want to heal. It's always about healing and growing and changing and expanding. So you choose the path that makes you feel like you're going to heal the most, that you're going to change some of that karma and really start to live your most aligned life. Okay. Yes, I'm just going in the order of the chat. That's why I just keep going back up. Okay, is it possible that you can fall in love with the same person from past lives? It is, and it's highly likely. Very often the people that we date and that who we marry are people that we've had intimate relationships with in past lives. So when we do past life work, you'll see your significant other. You might even be the opposite genders. Like, let's say you're a woman now and you go to a past life, find out you're a man there. And the woman that you're married to, it just feels like they're your partner. Like, you just know in your gut, the soul is exactly the same. I see that all the time. Let's see. Going back up. Already got that one. How do I know about my past life? Anything I should know or you can see? So a way that you can start to access your past lives is by accessing the unconscious mind, which we talked about way earlier if you've been here with me for a while. The unconscious mind is everything that the brain represses. When we're children, it's easy to access. Most kids remember their past lives and talk about it really casually. As we get older, we start to forget. But it's not gone. It's just repressed. It's just hidden. And the way that we can get to that information is through meditation. All you have to do is start meditating on a regular basis. Just let your mind get quiet. And when it does, and you can meditate in different ways, like you can meditate while you're walking and just kind of let your mind wander. You can do what's called fire scrying, where you take a candle and you just light the candle and stare at the flame. And you stare at that flame for as long as you can, letting any thoughts that come through pass and let them go. When you get good at meditation and it becomes something that's really normal, you can start setting intentions and kind of ask your psyche, ask your unconscious mind, your spirit guides to show you past lives. And it might happen during the meditation. It might happen while you're dreaming. So definitely want to bring a notebook to bed with you, because very often you'll come out and you'll be like, oh my God, why am I dreaming about like feudal Japan? And you just write down notes. So that's how you can start. Yes, I take people to their past lives. Okay, so here's an explanation of how I do this for anybody who's totally new to me, but I have plenty of videos on this, so make sure you go and check them out, because I'll just give you the mini sum. So what we do with past life work is I use meditation, not hypnosis. The reason why I do this is because I'm trauma informed. My background is in psychology and cognitive neuroscience. I was a licensed therapist for over a decade, still am technically, even though I'm not practicing therapy anymore because I do this. And it's really important that the brain and the body are on the same page. We want them to be coherent so that we don't cause re-traumatization. So we meditate. What I do when I take people to their past lives is I get them into that nice, relaxed state, really calming them down, creating that coherence within the mind and the body. And once it's obvious that they're there, and I'm looking for certain cues to show me that you're there, once you're fully coherent, what I'll do is I'll take you to a blank space, like somewhere we'll just clean the slate mentally. And I'll tell you to lead me. I'll give you something that'll like segue you into it, like a door or a staircase, whatever feels right. And when you see that, you're going to walk through it, or you're going to walk up it or down it, whatever it is. And when you do, you're going to land in a past life. And instead of me telling you anything, because I want you to fully understand that this is your memory coming through, I ask you what you see. Now, there's some people who don't see very much, like people with aphantasia. And so it might be a knowing in your gut or other senses, like feeling wind blowing through your hair or like feeling your emotions shift. Whatever senses you are using will fully capitalize on those. And you're going to start to paint the picture for me. Because I'm a channel, I'm seeing what you see. So I can also nudge you in different directions. Like, let's just say you're standing facing forward and you see a big lake, you see some trees, and it's all kind of like quiet and serene. If I can see people behind you and it feels like they are trying to get your attention, I'll just kind of casually ask you, like, okay, like turn around, tell me what's behind you. And I let you turn around and go, oh, there's people here. I didn't realize there was anybody with me. I thought I was alone. And I'll ask you to tell me about them. Tell me about their clothes. Tell me about anything you can sense. In the beginning of past life work, when we're doing this, the first 5 to 10 minutes, most stuff makes no sense. Where you're saying stuff and you're like, I'm on cobblestone. People are wearing these weird clothes. I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that. I don't know why I would be here. And then over time, all of a sudden you're connecting the dots and you're like, oh my God, I'm in a bookstore. I'm an author now. It seems like this is something that's coming through because I've done it before. You see yourself opening a book. It's very specific. You can read the words on it. It just starts to pour out. And the longer we're in there, the easier it is for you to pull these details. So that's it in a nutshell. Okay, let me go all the way back up now. Okay, let me see. I feel like I dream about my past life sometimes. That happens very often. really, really often. The reason why is because when you're sleeping, when you're just drifting off to sleep, you're getting into what are called theta brainwaves. That's the exact same brainwave pattern that we need to when we're doing past life work or shadow work, because that is how you access the unconscious mind. Once you're in a deep sleep, you can't anymore. Okay, back up. What do you think about angel numbers? I've seen them a lot of repeating ones lately. So I did talk about this earlier. Kind of think about them as like a door, like a knock on the door, like spirit's trying to reach out to you. So just start to answer the door. Let them know that you see them. Say it out loud. I do energy healing, seems related. It totally is. Energy healing is definitely related to this, and it's something that I incorporate within my work. Because when we go into past lives, or when we go into the shadow and we see moments, we don't want to leave them unhealed. We're going to use energy healing to release them and let them go. Where do you think a soul comes from if it has no past life? That's a really good question. So I don't know about the origin of souls, and I can't pretend to know anything about it, because when I go back, I just see past lives. We just keep going back to past lives. It's almost like there is no beginning. There's no end. It just is infinite and crazy. What I do know, though, something that I see often, is that our souls are not always incarnating as people. Sometimes they incarnate as other things, like plants. Like I've seen people who have had past lives as a tree, as weird as that sounds, or as a whale. If there's a soul that feels like it hasn't had a lot of earth lives as a human, it might be for this reason. Okay, can you choose? Oh, I already answered that one. Let's see. Hi, guys. Can we choose our life? I already answered that one. Sorry, just going through. Want to answer all these in order. Oh, here we go. How do you know if a person from your past life has shown up in twin flame form? This is a really good question. For people who are unaware of twin flames, here's just like a brief little overview of what you need to know. A twin flame is a soul, one soul that has been split in two. And when this happens, these souls tend to find each other very often. When they do, it can be a little bit intense. It's sort of like meeting yourself in a lot of ways. Like there's an instant connection, like you know each other. It feels so right. And at the same time, there can be a lot of fighting, the same way you fight with yourself a lot of the time internally, because you're so similar and so the same. So if you're looking for someone who's your twin flame, if you're asking yourself that question, what I recommend doing is a little technique that I love called the Human Pendulum. You can do this for anything. This is like a serious life hack. So what you guys can do, if you have a question, any question, like is this person my twin flame? Or should I eat a breakfast burrito or something else? You can ask yourself these questions. Your body knows the answers to them. Our bodies have a lot of answers about what is good for us. I learned about my allergies this way. I'm a cancer survivor. Got a lot of questions that I had that I asked my body for answers for. What you're going to do is you're going to drink a lot of water, like chug a bottle of it, because you need water to be in your body. It's going to help you move. And then what you're going to do is you're going to kind of stand with like your hips about right over your feet, like have your feet hip width apart. And when you stand like that, you're going to just kind of let your arms fall to your side, and you're going to start to ask yourself some yes or no questions to calibrate the pendulum. So here's an example. I'm going to ask just, is my name Danielle? Because that's an easy one. We already know the answer is yes, and we're going to see which way my body swings. So just standing still here, is my name Danielle? Very slowly, my body starts to move forward. Is my name Christina? Backwards. Okay. Do I do past life work? Am I a veterinarian? Okay. Try this and do it yourself. What you're going to find from that standing position is your body is just going to move you. It's really powerful. It's a little freaky at first, but our bodies know the answers. It's the same idea behind techniques like NET. If you guys have ever seen NET before, like you watch that one episode of Grey's Anatomy where they do it, where they have their arms sticking out and ask them if they're allergic to things. It's like, it drops down. Your body knows answers to questions that you need to know the answers to. So if you have a question about past lives, like, have I ever had a past life in Scotland? Yes, I have. Have I ever had a past life in Germany? No. You can ask anything. If you want to know about your twin flame, you can ask that too. Have I met my twin flame in this life? No, I have not. So you can ask whatever it is that you want. Okay, so moving on. Let's see. One of my relatives is very young and remembers his past life very well. Super common. Kids talk about their past lives constantly. There's actually a video floating around TikTok right now that I saw a couple days ago of a little girl watching the Olympics, and she's watching the weightlifters. And she actually recalls, like real casually at the end of the conversation, just like a little blip of like, I remember doing that before too. And it's so quick and so quiet. And it's like, yeah, I used to drop things. And it's just a little comment. And she might have been talking about nothing. She might have been talking about something else entirely. But when moments like that happen, it's usually a sign of a past life. My son, who is just now turning 5, has been obsessed with the stars and the planets since he was 2, since he was old enough to really speak and communicate with us about them. And he knows things he shouldn't know. Like he knows the names of all the dwarf planets, certain stars, constellations, things like that. And when you ask him about it, now at 5 years old, he just says he likes them. But when he was 3 and 2, he would say, it's what I've always done. It's something I used to do. I did that when I was older, which makes no sense unless you're thinking about past lives. Okay, do you think that our fantasy is maybe just our past life memories? Absolutely. So here's a little bit of information about fantasies from my experience as a licensed therapist who specializes when something happens to us early and it makes us feel really cared for, it triggers a response within the brain that causes serotonin, adrenaline, norepinephrine. It makes us feel good. And that can send blood to certain parts of the body to really make us feel elated. It can also make us physically turned on. So when we have experiences like that, we try to replicate them as an adult. So if you had, this is going to be kind of gross for you guys who are like into this stuff, but if you had a parent who was kind of rough with you as a kid and it made you feel really good and really warm, you might like a partner who's a little bit rough with you. It might be a turn on. I know it's weird, but bear with me. If you have fantasies about things that feel like a little bit past lifey, it's probably because you experienced them in a past life. Those shape the things that we are attracted to, the things that make us feel good, whether it's sexual or not. Okay, so yeah, your body holds all your information from your past lives. Why, as you grow older, do you forget about your past lives? This is an awesome question. This goes not just for past lives, but also for your spiritual abilities. Let me start by saying this. Every single one of you has spiritual gifts. All of you. Every single one of you has the ability to connect with spirit guides, to maybe connect with spirits. Some people have stronger gifts than others, to understand people's emotions. Like calling yourself an empath means that you can read a room, that you can feel what they're feeling. That means you're connected to their energy. That means that you're spiritual. We all have gifts. And when we're born, we all remember our past lives because the brain hasn't decided to push them into the unconscious just yet. In the same way that it doesn't push away our gifts when we're young. We can see spirits more often when we're young. What does cause that to happen is our brain's programming. Our brains have like a big wiring system of neural pathways. They're like super highways of the brain. And when you're young, you don't have a lot of wiring. You're born with almost none. And over time, experiences create certain highways. They create connections. So let's just say when you were very young, you started seeing spirits and you told your mom like, hey, Grandpa came to visit me last night, and you never met Grandpa. You don't know anything about him. And you go, he was wearing this chain. He wanted me to tell you about it. And she goes, oh my God. No, don't talk about that. Don't tell anybody. What happens within the mind is your experience is now creating some emotions, some chemicals that feel icky because it feels like it's not a good thing. That informs the body that this is not safe, causes blood to rush to certain areas and oxygen to transmute in certain ways, changes your breathing. That sends a message back up to the mind of this is not safe, cannot do this. That alters your neural structure within the brain. It changes your neural pathways. And so you have learned that talking about spirits is unsafe. It creates a pathway like this. Over time, you maybe watch scary movies and things where it's not safe, like The Conjuring, where you go this is bad. That strengthens that highway. Now it's about 2 across. Now you have friends who talk about how it's not okay or it's unsafe, or you go to church where they talk about certain things and shame you and blame you. And I'm definitely not bashing the church. Sorry for anybody who's into that. Love it. Anyways, that creates exits off of these neural pathways, right? And now this is like a super highway. It might be like 6 lanes, ton of exits, ton of access. When that happens, it's like your whole brain is wired to not see, to not remember, to not understand. This happens for everything. And so the people that you guys follow on Instagram or on TikTok who call themselves like natural born mediums, or like they've been seeing spirits since they were little, or they're past life regressionists, all that we have done is either not had experiences that made us afraid early, so those neural pathways never formed, or there could have been a latent phase where it's like the gifts dropped off because your neural pathways were like, this isn't safe, let's wire around safety. And then later, you did the work to change your neural pathways to open it back up, like create a community that felt really safe, found people who supported it, talked about it, made it feel like it was okay. The old neural pathways do something called synaptic pruning, where they're pulled out of the brain because they're no longer necessary, and new ones form, synaptogenesis. When your brain forms in that way, you remember everything. So that's the reason why a lot of kids remember their past lives, and then over time, by the time they hit 4, definitely by 5 years old, it fades. If you are someone who talks to your kids about it, which a lot of people do, if you have like a nephew or a child who talks about their past lives and you engage them on it and ask them questions and reinforce it and tell them that's awesome, like super cool that you did that, like tell me more. What will happen is it'll feel safe and the memory will remain. In the same way normal memories stay in the brain if you talk about them a lot. Think about the memories that your family talks about constantly. Like that aunt that comes over is like, remember that time when blah, blah, blah happened? Those things keep memories fresh in the mind. And remember, it's not the real memory itself. It's like the mutated version of it, because everybody has a retelling of the story and it'll shape differently in the mind. But it at least keeps those neural pathways alive. Whereas if it's squashed and nobody talks about it, it dies off. Okay, so moving back again. Let's see. I think I may be clairvoyant. Do you know how to know for sure? So for anybody who doesn't know about the clairs, we all do have those different gifts, and there's different ones. Clairvoyance is the ability to see. So these are people who can see spirits. These are people who are very in tune with the visual. They might be able to see auras, which for the record, all of you guys can do. I can teach you how to do that. So clairvoyance, if you want to know if you're clairvoyant, you are. So congratulations. You can strengthen it though and make it stronger. One of my favorite ways to do this is by working on looking at people's auras. So what you're going to want to do for this is you are going to want to look at a person's picture or a person in general when they're standing against a plain background. So either against something that's all black or all white. Usually that's the easiest. And what you're going to do is you're going to look at the space that's like just over their head. And you're going to stare at it for a while. And eventually you're going to see fuzz start to develop around it. And that fuzz is going to be different colors. That is an aura. And you've always been able to see them. You just don't practice it. So practice it and see how it feels. And what's going to happen eventually is you're not going to have to try very hard. It's just going to show up all the time where you can see them very clearly. Another way to practice clairvoyance, and this is one that I love to do, is to take a picture, any picture, and just try to remember the way that it looks. Let me see if I have something nearby. No, I don't really. Okay, the picture's on my wall, right? The flowers that are here. What you would do is you would stare at them for like 30 seconds, and then you close your eyes and you try to recreate it in your mind. This is like strengthening those neural pathways of sight. What you want to do once you can really get all the details in, like the different shades of green and brown on these leaves over here, or how this is a bud and the rest is kind of a bloomed flower. Once you get really good at it, is you want to close your eyes and imagine it changing. Like imagine a stiff breeze passing through these flowers and these leaves. And when that happens, you're in your mind changing the image. That is really strengthening clairvoyance and making it super strong. So yes, to answer your question, you're clairvoyant. This is how you strengthen it. It is like a muscle. You can make it stronger and stronger. I wonder if it's why I don't want to have children in this lifetime. I know that I've lost a child in one of my past lives and dream about it all the time. Yeah, that's really common. I work a lot with women who've had issues with childbirth in past lives. Unfortunately, in the past, it was much more common because it was more dangerous. And when that happens, it can cause you to not want to do that again in this lifetime. Or it can do the opposite and make you really want to do that in this lifetime to kind of get over that feeling and start over, reconnect with that soul that you've lost. Yes, you can keep practicing and hone your skills. How short of a time frame can a soul choose to get back? I love this question because I see this like hotly debated all the time. So I'm just going to tell you what I have experienced with past life work. Most of the time, souls take a little while. What they do is after you pass, just like you guys may have experienced with loved ones that you've had pass, is you just want to wait and see how people do. So like if you had an aunt pass and she is a daughter and the daughter just had a baby, she's going to want to wait and see how that baby develops. She's going to be there for all those big moments. She's going to hang around and just be in everybody's presence. Once that lineage is gone, she may not have a reason to stay anymore. There isn't really a reason to just float around this plane. So what will happen at that point is she'll be ready to reincarnate. Another reason why souls wait a little while is because they feel like they have more healing to do, because when we're in that upper realm space, we heal a lot and we understand ourselves. It's like kind of like getting a crash course in everything that we were supposed to learn so our souls can understand it and try again next time. I have seen people come back quickly, like really quickly. And it's usually because there's specific unfinished business that they feel like they need to come back and deal with. So there's one instance I'm thinking of that has nothing to do with me. And this is a famous past life study that I think it was 10 years ago that this was in the news, where a kid in a foreign country was claiming that he knew that he was killed in that same town in his past life. I think he was like 7 years old. And he brought the police to the killer's door and said, like, you killed me in my past life. And then brought the police to the site where not only the murder weapon, but the body was buried, which nobody had been able to find in the past 8 years. And it was him. He brought them to it because he remembered. So it can be quick. It can be very quick. I have someone who's in my group program, Create Your Light Academy, who has had 3 lifetimes in a row where it was like, bam, like she just kept coming back. And it seems like it was because she didn't have any loved ones. Like she didn't have family to hold on to. In the one lifetime, her parents died really early. In another lifetime, her partner died before her and the two of them came back together. It was like, no need to wait around. Like, let's just get back in there and do this again. So it all depends on that soul and what they want. More often, though, I find that they tend to wait and really do that time to heal. Let's see. I've always been drawn to fire. Yeah, that can very much be a past life thing. It could also be an elemental thing. We have the elements: earth, wind, air, fire, and ether. And they have their own spiritual component to them. This is like a basic tenet of shamanism. And you can work with those spirits the same way you would work with Mother Nature or with like an archangel, like Archangel Michael. All you would need to do is call upon them. So if you are really connected to fire, there might be a lot of fire in your birth chart, and it might be something that you just feel naturally called to. It could also be a past life thing too, like you worked with fire a lot, or you were even a firefighter. A lot of people feel called to places like the water, and like they want to live near water. They can't be landlocked. They need to be near water. And if they grew up in Colorado, the second they're old enough, they go to like Florida State University so they can be near the water. If that happens, it's usually a past life thing. Like your soul feels better there. I grew up on the water. I'm from Long Island, New York originally, and now I live in the woods in New Jersey. It's because I had a past life where I was a Native American woman, a Lenape woman, and I'm back here to reclaim the lands and to really take the time to nurture them. And that's something that we do unconsciously, because when I bought this house, I didn't know that. I hadn't seen that past life yet. It just felt like I needed to be here and like I needed to claim this space as my own. It happens. Okay, so let's see. Oh, hello, gorgeous, back to you. Okay, what if it's just a thought? Oh, this is a response to each other. I'll let you guys figure that out on your time. Let's see. Oh, you guys are really going at it in here. Let's see. Will we remember the past life regression? Yes, I do not use hypnosis. It is all just a conscious process, so you're meditating. When you meditate, like if you guys practice meditation now, you remember everything that you go through. So it's just like that. And what you're going to do is you're going to go to that past life. You're going to see everything. You're going to experience it. And when we're done, we're going to evaluate it, because you might not be seeing some connections that need to be made. I also send everybody a recording, because I feel like when you're in the zone, like think about when you're watching a movie, right? Like you're really focused on the movie. Like the theater's really dark. You're like all in it. Like if you just watch Black Widow, you're like totally focused in. You're taking all the details. But what you remember when you leave is just the important pieces, because that's just how the brain works. So if there's any details that you missed that you want to go back to, you need to watch it a second or a third time to really get all the details, like I did with all the Lord of the Rings movies or Harry Potter movies, because I'm a huge loser. When you do that, you remember more, and you just kind of keep those pieces and retain them. So I send everybody a recording of the session so that they can remember all of the details. You don't have to worry about missing anything. And remember, it's you who's talking to me. You're telling me about your past life. You're telling me what you see. So as you see it played back to you, you're remembering even more of what you already saw. Yeah, it's super cool. I'm pretty sure I remember pieces and bits from a couple of my past lives. Yeah, that's really common. A lot of us have that memory. Think about this, right? Think about like your favorite class in high school. And I hated high school. Like I got all A's because I was lucky, but I didn't show up. I skipped class all the time. I had no interest. But I was in history class every day. I loved history class. So it's no surprise that I ended up doing what I do, because I'm fascinated by history. And I think it's because I've done this work before, and I'm really interested in taking people to these moments in history and reliving them with them. I get to see so much cool stuff. So if you were drawn to a certain lesson, like let's just say you were obsessed with the French Revolution to a point where other people are like, this is so boring. Like, I don't really understand why you care. Probably because you've been there. Probably because it's something you are connected to. If you see and you're like really into like the caste system and that whole period of history and understanding that in feudal Europe, like you've probably been there. And it's probably not something anybody else in your class cares about, but you. Why do I feel like I was super wealthy before my past life? You might have been. I've seen a lot of people, and listen, past lives get a weird rap because everybody thinks when you go back, you're going to be like the captain on the Titanic. You're not. Like, I love you guys, but you're not. Your past lives are probably really boring. And occasionally I see people who have done cool things, have been cool people, but cool people who aren't that notable, like you're probably not going to see something that's like, oh my God, like I was a part of this. It was me. I'm the one who impacted it. It was my choice. It's more likely that you're going to be like living on a farm and you're going to have this amazing life where you feel really connected to the earth. And it's a sign that you should be doing that now. And instead you're working on Wall Street and killing yourself essentially. Or maybe you were a pilot in a past life and that's the work that you do now. So it's like validation of the fact that you've done this before, stuff like that. So if you feel like you were super wealthy in a past life, you might have been. It's very possible. If you feel like you lean towards things that are lavish and like you're like champagne dreams on a beer budget, it could be a past life thing where it's like, you're like, why can't I spend that money? I've done it before, but I don't know when. That could be the reason why. How do I figure out my past life? It really comes down to meditation. If you start to meditate and get really, really good at meditation, you're going to access unconscious memories. You're going to access theta brainwaves, which is how you find those unconscious memories. And you're going to let them start sneaking through. But you can't be that person who's like, I want to meditate, do it once, and then go, that didn't work. It has to be something you do on a regular basis. Because if you don't, the brain doesn't have enough time to really see the things that it needs to see. It just doesn't. So you need to give yourself the time to get there. Okay, let's see. How are you sure it's a past life you're seeing? Awesome question. It really is a context thing, because when you daydream, are you daydreaming about past lives? Probably not. When you do past life work, you're kind of setting the intention to go there. And you're going to see, obviously, that it's not from this timeline. You're going to see the clothing and the details. You're going to see the roads are not concrete. They're like made of, you know, like weird stones that are crushed up kind of, or just like dirt, or there's no roads whatsoever. You're going to use all those context clues. And something that I do as we go through it, because you're not going to be brought to a past life and have it be like 1778 Germany. That's not how this is going to work. You're going to see things and you're not going to know what it is. So I'm going to try and help you find the context clues. Like, tell me what you're wearing on your feet. Like, what do your shoes look like? Because shoes are a huge indicator of time periods, because shoes have changed historically over time, or the clothing that you're wearing. If you just woke up and you're in a shift, a nightgown, and you might not be a woman, you might be a guy because they wore nightgowns in those times. So putting the pieces of those puzzles together, really looking at the way that the houses are built, that's an important thing, because that can also tell us location too, because depending on the atmosphere, like the environment within that place, the homes are going to look very different. Even when it comes to like the same country, it can be very different depending on the region of the country. We're just kind of piecing all these different things together as we go. Let's see. I feel like I was royalty. That's super cool. Yes, I do. So Brian Weiss, who I've talked about a bit during this live, is an amazing former psychiatrist who does past life work. He uses hypnosis to help people access their past lives. He has a book that came out a long time ago called Many Lives, Many Masters. I highly recommend you to read it if you're interested in past life work. It's actually one of the things that got me turned on to this in the first place, because I had a teacher who just handed me the book for no reason. I was like 15 years old. She was my chorus teacher. She had no reason to give it to me, and she just felt like she was supposed to. And we laugh about it now because now we're friends all these years later because I'm in my mid-30s. But it almost is like, where the hell did that come from? Like, she laughed. She's like, I have no idea why I gave that to you. It just was like everything in my body said I have to hand her this book. Other big researchers and people that you can check out if you're into this stuff are Dr. Michael Newton and Dolores Cannon. They're amazing. Do you end up remembering if you spoke another language? You do. So there's one past life that I always think of when I see this. I did this past life for a college student. She was, I think, 19 years old at the time that we did it. And this was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And we were doing this work in person because at the time I had my office in Philly. We were doing in-person sessions. I don't do that anymore. They're all virtual because I have clients all over the world. When we were doing this work, we found her in this like raggedy outfit. She realized that everybody else was wearing the same thing. She was on this like cramped automobile. She didn't really know the details of it. She just felt like she was like packed in there and smushed. But she was close enough to the ability to see outside. And she saw herself rolling up past a fence. And on the outside, there was a sign in German. And she read the sign perfect. I was recording the sessions then, just as I do now. So it was all on recording. So afterwards, we looked up what she said, and apparently it was the exact sign that was on the outside of Auschwitz. So I'm getting goosebumps now. She read exactly what it said. She doesn't speak German. She's from Jersey. She was in Philly at the time. Like, no reason to know this. She's Italian. Like, no reason to know German. And she said verbatim exactly what it said on that sign in perfect German. So yeah, you will be able to. Okay, so my Shadow Seeker book. Somebody asked, can you tell me what the Shadow Seeker book is about? I actually have one in front of me now. So this is my Shadow Seeker's journal. I made it because a lot of people on TikTok were asking me for shadow work prompts. Because when you're doing shadow work, you're accessing the unconscious mind to try and understand yourself more and to get past the big blocks that you have. And to do that, you need to find areas in. You need to find little pathways in. So I put all the prompts in here, and it's like a journal format, so you write down your answers to them. I always recommend that when you're using the Shadow Seeker's journal, that you meditate and then ask the question, because when you do that, you're already in that theta brainwave state. So you're gonna go much deeper. You're gonna be able to actually ask yourself the questions that you need answers to. So here's one of them. I'm just gonna kind of give you an example. So what is your relationship with food like, and in what ways would you change it? It's a weird question. You're probably not asking yourself on a regular basis. And if you think about it logically from a conscious state, you're probably like, it's fine. Like, I kind of eat like shit sometimes, but for the most part, it's fine. When you meditate, what happens is you are able to get to those deeper levels. You're really going to understand more about it. So if you meditate, you might find that when you were little, you had a parent who always dieted and you watched them struggle with this all the time. And you forgot about this memory, but you would see your mom standing in front of the mirror, like pulling parts of her body and like checking for body fat. And this would happen from the time that you were 3 until you were 10. And it just stuck with you. It like sits in your body. And so you've learned that food is the enemy, that it's something that hurts you, that it's going to stick to your body. It's going to make you feel bad. And it changes your neural pathways. So this book is supposed to be the pathway in. That's how I want you to see it. It's like a pathway into these deeper levels of psyche. And once you have the answers to these questions, there's 80 pages of them. Once you have the answers, you can restructure your neural pathways by changing the way that you see things. You get to decide at that point whether or not that viewpoint sits with you anymore, or if you want to choose a different one. Let's see. Amber says, I feel like deja vu is related to past lives and I'm uncertain. Yeah, it is actually. So deja vu is one of those things where if you're experiencing something for the first time, it's like your whole body feels like you've done it before, or like you've experienced this moment. There's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is because of alternate timelines, but that's a conversation for another day because that's deep. Another one could be past lives. People feel this a lot of the time on vacation. Like, let's just say you've always been called to go on vacation to the Netherlands. You have no idea why. Like, it's not like a super popular vacation spot, but you feel like you need to go there. And so you do. And the second you kind of set foot in front of this like one building, it's like your whole body remembers being there before. Those deja vu moments are signs of a past life. It doesn't have to be on vacation. It could be just walking down the street. I have one person who did my group program who had a past life in the exact same town that she is now. And she just bought a house on the same street that she was on before. It's not the same house, but the reason why she bought the house is because she was standing in front of the one that she had before and it felt like home. And so she bought this one. So yeah, that's definitely a sign. Okay, good. So somebody has a food issue, so I'm glad that I brought that up. Meditate on that question and see what happens. I've tried to meditate so often, I feel like I never reach a deeper level. This is actually a very common phenomenon, and I'm so glad somebody brought this up. When we meditate, what is happening is we are switching our brainwave state. So imagine that brainwaves kind of look like this, right? Kind of like electricity, or like if you're looking at a heart monitor. What happens when you switch your brainwave state into a more relaxed state is the waves space out a bit more and they slow down, like they're not so high and so low in the peaks and the valleys. We want to be in a theta brainwave state when we access unconscious information. So when you meditate, if you have trouble getting to that state, it's because you have a lot of shadow. You have a lot of unconscious stuff that's like, oh, good, she's here. We got to tell her all the things. And it just starts to go. All this information is just coming through like crazy. So that's the sign that you actually need to meditate more. So my advice for anybody who feels like they have that problem where like you're trying to meditate and all this stuff is coming up is to just write down what's coming up. Like keep a pen and a piece of paper next to you. And as the stuff comes up, like as you're trying to meditate, if it's like grocery list, write it down. And it's like you need to pick up oranges, write it down. And also you need to call your brother back, write it down. And when you're done writing down everything that's coming up, go back into that meditative state and start asking yourself some questions. Why is it important that I need to think about my groceries right now? Oranges. Why is it really important for me to think about oranges right now? And what's going to come through is other stuff like your sacral chakra. Your sacral's orange and you wouldn't have paid attention to it otherwise. It's just a way for you to get in. Okay, I need to pay attention to the sacral. What's wrong? Womb trauma. You're going to start getting answers. What you're getting right now is windows into those questions. It's like an opening, like spirit numbers, like 1111 and 333. It's just an opening. Take the opening and run with it. Let it go there. If you're someone who has a lot of trouble meditating, like you can't get your mind and your heart rate and everything to slow down and reach coherence, which is where we want you to be, think about alternative forms of meditation. Think about instead of doing like the bullshit, like sitting on the ground, kind of going om thing that people do online and on TV and stuff, do something different and go for a walk. Like just go outside and look at the trees and notice what they look like and feel the air and feel the sun on your skin and just start to put yourself in your body and think about how it feels. It's not different from doing a body scan where you're like sitting in your room going, how does my head feel? How does my throat feel? When you're outside and you're walking through nature and you're going, the breeze on my skin feels amazing. It feels like a light touch. It feels like a tickle. And the sun feels warm and cozy. You're reaching that same brainwave state. So don't think that it has to just be you sitting in a quiet room. Meditation can happen in so many different ways. You can also look up, Dr. Joe Dispenza has walking meditations that you can do if you need something more guided, that you can do as you're on the move. It's just an easier segue in. So hopefully that helps. Can dreams be from past lives? Yes, they can. Absolutely. When you're reaching that dream state and you're going into the unconscious mind, you're going to start accessing information from the unconscious and dreams can start to pour through. Let's see, I'm going to answer one more question and then I'm going to let it go because I am starving and I need to go get lunch and I love you guys, but I will do this again. I promise. I did it yesterday. I'll probably hop on here again tomorrow. Okay, let's see. Let me find a good question. Oh, okay. So this is how I'm going to end. This is a really good question. When does the soul enter the body? At birth, conception, or in utero? So this is controversial, but I love that somebody asked this. So I'm just going to tell you what I've seen. And the answer is different all the time. I can't give exact specific things because I've seen so many different things. One of the pieces of information that comes through when we do past life work occasionally is people choosing when to incarnate. And sometimes it happens after someone has been pregnant for a while. I've even seen someone who chose to enter their mom's body, like after birth, like they became that baby, their soul dropped in after birth. And the thing that was interesting about that one is their mom, when they talked about it afterwards, was like, I did not feel connected to you until you were 2 months old. And that's the time that they felt like they dropped in. It's different for everyone. Some souls immediately assume the position, like the second that they need to be in there, like let's say like 3 months. It's different for everyone. Now, this gets really, really heated and debated when it comes to conversations about things like abortions. So here's another caveat that I want to add. If a soul chooses to enter a body and then that soul gets aborted, there's a reason it chose that. And again, this is super controversial. I'm not claiming to be the #1 expert on this topic. I'm just telling you guys what I have seen and what I've talked to other experts about that have seen the same thing. When we choose to be born, we also know the way that we are going to die. We see this ahead of time. We still have free will. We still have the ability to maneuver things and shape them. But ultimately, the major transitions in our life are already accounted for. And so when a soul enters a body and then it's aborted, they are choosing that. And they're choosing it for a reason. There might be a karmic loop that they need to finish out because of that, or a lesson that they need to teach the mother or the father that is going to come from that experience. I'm getting crazy goosebumps now. So it's important to just be open and keep an open mind about that stuff. Anyways, I've been talking for an hour, so I'm going to go eat some tacos. And I love you guys all so much. Check out more of my videos. I have so much information on there about past lives and spirituality and about connecting to your spirit guides and what shadow work is. So go have fun and ask me a ton of questions because I love responding to questions in my videos too. So thank you for the roses. All right, guys. I love you all so much, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.